I'm not super excited about starting this video this way, but due to the circumstances, I'm gonna do it anyway. Normally the videos I make on this channel are action type videos, farming videos, basically me doing a bad job of pretending like I know what I'm doing when making videos. But lately we've been doing a lot more history type videos, documenting the history of the family farms and my grandpa Roger's unique past growing up in the Columbia Basin and all the different interesting things he's done. We decided that we should do the same thing for my aunt and my grandma. So we planned a trip down to Oregon where they grew up. I made some big mistakes and had some serious problems trying to record the audio for this video. Thankfully, my cousin Bailey came to the rescue. Bailey is an awesome person. She travels the world documenting everything on her phone, takes unreal videos, even if she annoys the people around her sometimes by sticking cameras in their face.
Put that camera away.
My Uncle Brad also helped out quite a bit by taking some videos on his phone.
That was not a pleasant experience.
Here is the story of my grandma and aunt and their history. Hopefully the video turned out alright.
It looks terrible.
That was where Jerry and Darlene lived, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You said you remembered playing outside when the ambulance took Mom to the hospital.
Right.
With that tubal pregnancy she had and almost died.
Well, that was after 36.
Yes. It was before me, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's past her upset now. She's taking charge again. Okay, go.
Oh, hi.
We're the daughters of Bugs Scofield, Louis Scofield, but he was known as Bugs, and Ernestine Scofield. We were raised in the North Santiam area. This is my sister Linda. I am Mary, and we are taking a tour of our history.
It started with our father living in this area, which we'll see some of the houses that he lived in. And he was a local farmer, and our mother came to teach. And she came to teach in this school, North Santiam Grade School.
My senior year in college, I took a long-term subbing job at this school because this teacher had fallen and broken her hip. And I taught here when I met my husband, Charles, who was teaching at Cascade. And then I taught here for several years after I went back to teaching when the kids were in school. But we'll go back in history a little bit further. Our father attended the school district here. The school was down by these trees, and that building was torn down, and they built this school. Now, this is where my mother taught, and she actually taught the nieces and nephews of her future husband. This was built in 1936. It was a two-room school. When Linda and I attended here, it was a two-room school and then became a four-room school. And later on, the community bought a barrack, an army barrack up by Detroit. It's under the lake now. Tore it down and built the gymnasium.
So that house right there was where Daddy's longtime hired man lived. His name was Ad James. He never got dirty. Dad was just covered with grease always, and Ad never had anything on him.
My feelings and attitude are improving.
What were they when you first saw it?
Utter depression.
Aw.
It looks terrible.
Right side of the road. The four-way, go.
The falling
On
down.
the windows, I would love to get in there and see if those cabinets.
Pull up so people can get in here. If I can get me in the shade, it'd be great.
What about the cabinets?
Well, they were.
He built the house where Daddy was born about a mile west of here. He was the youngest of 6 boys. The other boys were born in South Dakota. They moved to this house where Daddy was raised growing up. Grandpa had bought enough land in this area. He bought it from a fellow by the name of Hatch for all of his 6 sons to become farmers. They lived there for about 2 years, and then they built this house, which is just across the field. The house that Grandpa built was the first house to have indoor plumbing and the first house to have electricity. And he really encouraged Daddy to build their family home while they could enjoy it, because he built that house and his wife only got to live in it for 6 months before she passed away. He built the little house. It was on the other side of an orchard, which is now just a field. And that was for the hired man.
It had several hired people that lived in it. Of course, typical in some farm areas, families would live there, and then some mornings you would wake up and they were gone. The farmer's hired man was gone. Then he'd have to find somebody else. This house was built in 1938, right?
Yes.
Mary was just 2. And Uncle Charlie, my grandmother's brother-in-law, designed the house, but then someone else built it.
Daddy had bought the land from his brothers, some of his brothers, until he created the existing farm of about 220 acres.
Or 250. I don't know. It's around there.
And we sold the front 80 after Daddy passed away.
That's this area here.
And they had moved to Staten in, what year was it?
1990.
1990, because Daddy realized he just could not keep it up with the way he wanted to keep it up. And then this house became a rental, and that was the beginning of his downfall. That after we sold it, I don't think they rented it at all. We thought they were preserving the house site for a building site because you got 5 years to replace an existing building. Another theory is why they've never torn it down is because of the asbestos. And if a house gets to the bad enough condition, which I think this one would qualify, they don't have to comply with the asbestos rules. For whatever reason, the house still exists, looking terrible.
Mom had a big rose garden here and had a sign out in front that said the Scofields, and we've got some nice pictures of that. That's in our farm book, so we don't have to remember it looking like this. But the antenna is still up there. We had antenna TV.
We had the first TV in the community, and we would have the whole neighborhood at night.
Hello. Good morning. How are you doing?
A rental.
And that was the beginning of the decline. And then we sold it. Grandpa built.
Yes. And they lived in this one right here. This was bush beans
And this was the...
Well, I wonder where he is.
I don't know. He's down on the river.
8.
Right here was the gate.
There's the gate right there.
Oh yeah, but he's opened it for us.
Oh, I don't know.
This is where the beaver would build their dams.
Well, they dammed up that first creek
There's
too.
supposed to be water here.
Stay down though, just stay down.
That's my sister Mary. I'm Linda.
Bye Linda, bye Mary. A little one, so I understand that. Hey, down, stay down. Gabby, Rosie, come on.
It is, but it...
Okay.
We've never
That's
seen
new.
it. Can we
Well,
see it from
it's
here?
a half a mile or so up.
Yeah,
Upstream.
we can. You really, even at the top end where the wall is, you can't see around that last bend because
Yeah.
it's where the there's a like a water line that goes over the river right there and stuff too now. So
Yeah, I'd
well,
like
the grass is pretty high.
I'd
This
like
is
to
looking
pull her down to the dike.
Oh yeah.
Back here.
Oh, it's amazing. This hey,
Did they plant?
there's something about you.
No,
She likes
Corey
you for some
and his
reason.
Boy
but-
Scouts planted
No.
a lot of.
No, the U.S. The
We're standing in part of the land that Grandpa Scofield bought. This was all wooded area except for 5 acres because the stagecoach trail came through here. It forded the river at the very northeast corner of our land. There was an inn there and about 5 acres that had been cleared from trees. When I was growing up, we had horses. We would ride our horses through here. And then over the years, Daddy cleared all the land, and
This
There's
became
a-
about a 110-acre field from one end to the other.
to get here from the house, you had to ford 3 different creeks, which Daddy diverted over time, except for Cold Creek. And you can't see it now, but it was a spring-fed, really, really cold creek, good swimming hole.
As we drove down here, we drove through the stuff that was, well, he grubbed a lot of that ground too, but he grew raspberries, strawberries. He belonged to the 5-ton club, and and then after one of the floods, he restored this, and he got a Conservation Farmer Award for it. And he grew bush beans. There were some pumpkins once, carrots, sweet corn.
Daddy got a conservation award for cutting down all the trees and converting this into farmland. And then the government replanted it so that it's trees. And this became a century farm. The mortgage was satisfied in 1919. Could not find out exactly when they purchased it, but the mortgage was satisfied in 1919.
There was a bad flood in '64 and another one, I think, in '78. But it literally scoured all this land down to the rocks. And we do have pictures of that in our farm book that we'll be able to see. And this land, all this topsoil went that direction because the river cut through about right up here. And it hung up on raspberries. And one of the reasons he got the conservation award, he went in there and got a bulldozer and pushed all that dirt back up across this and got some government help to do it.
In '76, we were in Hawaii at Christmas time. The whole family was supposed to go. Daddy bought the tickets for everybody, and then he and Mom didn't go. And they had a bad flood that year. And Jim Towery, who was renting some of the land, put old car beds in the river to divert it because it would have cut a swath right through the farm. It would have taken out Marion if it had been allowed to go. And of course, the car beds were illegal, but that was a case of asking forgiveness rather than permission. And it saved Marion community.
scour in certain areas, but I haven't really hit them right, and that's what all my friends don't judge.
Oh, you can get in here.
Well, good.
Right there's fun, yeah, actually.
This is the old Cascade Union High School where Linda and I both graduated. Now it's the junior high school. Daddy was on the school board when the Union High District was formed, and he remained chairman of the school board all the way through our schooling. He signed both of our diplomas. All of my kids graduated from here. The cougar is the mascot because our neighbor Towery, and we have mentioned him before, I think, Marion Towery ran over and killed a cougar right in front of the site where the school was being built. So that became the mascot.
Mary was valedictorian of her high school. She graduated in 59. 55. 55. I graduated in 58. Where this end here is the original from that tall. That's where the library was and the offices. But down at that end, it burned, and that was the gym. And it burned after we graduated. So then they rebuilt it.
Charles was teaching here when I met him. That was the year that I was the long-term sub at North Santiam, and he was in charge of the AV, and we had an old Army projector, which I did not know how to run. So I called and asked if their AV man would come out and show me how to run the projector. And he came out, showed me how to run the projector. And the first time I tried to show a film, I had film all over the floor. So I had to call him again. But that's the last time I had to make the initiation. And he was a first-year teacher here. He was born and raised in North Dakota. And his dad had always wanted to come to Oregon. And he had taught 1 year in North Dakota and then was drafted into the Army. He could have had his old school back, but the person that had replaced him had bought a house and had kids. So he just decided he would come to Oregon. So he taught here until it burned, and that happened to be an arson, and I don't remember what year that was. And then he taught in Salem. He had quit teaching. He was going to farm with Daddy. And that's the end of that story.
One reason he left, when it burned, they were going to double shift in order to get education to continue, and he went into Salem, so he just taught at a junior high there, Hudson.
Judson Junior High.
Judson, yeah. And he was an industrial arts teacher, and he made our big family picture of out on the farm. He made that. He made a frame like that, and the one that's with all the grandkids above the piano. He made that, and there's another one. And he made end tables, and
I have a lot of furniture he made. I could create the idea and he could make it.
it's a little more than just building a box with a hinge on it, like they do in shop class now.
One of his students tells the story, if they made something in industrial arts and they didn't do a good job, he would demolish it, and then he would help them rebuild it. But he wasn't going to have anything going out of there that didn't look good. He was a good teacher. His students loved him. He worked with Daddy on the farm in the summer, even before he was going to quit teaching and become a full-time farmer. And his kids would work on the farm. We'd drove an old school bus, and he would pick the kids up and take them out to the farm. And when they were out in the fields, they called him Casey. They loved to call him Casey, and that was fun. But the minute school took up again, he was Mr. Stangle. He was the type of teacher that the boys would come up to introduce him to their new girlfriend or show off their new car.
Yeah, he was good with kids.
This piece of property that we are standing on now was owned by Mother's cousin Lawrence Roberts. Daddy purchased it. There's about 120 acres in the lot. At the time, there were 2 houses, and this was all farmland. Where the manufactured home is now stood an old gray farmhouse, and beyond that, a smaller house that was for a hard man, I guess.
Yeah.
We tore down the little house immediately, and we actually lived in the old gray house while we were building the house where I raised the kids.
The creek that goes in front of her house is the one that we used to float down. We will stop in Almsville to show where we put the inner tubes in, but you could see the creek as you drove by.
This was a farm road this was cornfields generally, and there were a lot of farm roads, and Corey had a motorbike, and we had a horse arena out here. So between the creek and the horse arena and the motorbike, this was a really good place to raise the kids, and we had lots of friends here. And we would stop at the park in Almsville where we would put the tubes in, float down here, get out, raid the cookie jar.
Yeah, it was fun. We had, sometimes the creek was very low, and you'd almost scrape the bottom of your shorts off. Mary and Charles and Sonia, when she was how old?
About 3.
They went down and got in a little, you better tell that story.
Well, we were in a rubber raft, and I had a life jacket on Sonia, and we started to go into the bank, and Charles was not a boatman. He didn't know how to handle a boat.
Born in North Dakota.
He grabbed a branch, and of course it flipped the boat. And Greta went under, and Sonia went under, and I grabbed her and got her. And she had a life jacket. She'd have popped up eventually, And Charles was just about 2 feet over, and he's standing in water knee deep, but we just happened to be in a deep hole. For a long time, Sonia did not like boats.
She's old enough to remember.
One time, and we lived in that house over there while I was teaching, and one time I got up and a beaver had fallen a tree across the road, and we had to cut the tree out before I could get to work.
And one time Greta was out riding her bike and it was frosty, and she came into the house dripping wet, and she had skidded on the bridge and fallen off the bridge into the water. Nobody knew she was even out there. But it obviously wasn't too deep.
For all my days, now that I've got your love, I won't let it go to waste. Time was told me we're scared the most of these things we can't control. No, oh, understand.